In today's video, we're going to continue our look at the entire career of The Undertaker. Last time we looked at 1990 to 1993, so let's get started straight away at 1994. So by the time 1994 had came around, The Undertaker was firmly established as a main WWF attraction. The character was popular with fans, his ring style captivated younger audiences, and his reputation had grown backstage with the rest of the locker room. Hulk Hogan had left the WWF, Vince McMahon was prepping himself to go to trial over the juicing scandal, there was a new generation movement within the World Wrestling Federation on the cusp of becoming the leading television initiative, so things looked very different at the beginning of 1994 in comparison to when Taker first showed up in 1990. Yokozuna was the WWF champion heading into the 1994 Royal Rumble, and The Undertaker would be getting a title shot at the pay-per-view. During this time period, The Undertaker had been dealing with back problems, and he needed to take time away from wrestling to heal up. So with this in mind, The Undertaker vs Yokozuna casket match at the Royal Rumble was used as a sort of farewell match to The Undertaker. The match was indeed memorable. It done a lot to build anticipation for when The Undertaker would eventually return months down the line, and even in losing this match, The Undertaker became what this pay-per-view is mostly remembered for. The Undertaker had Yokozuna properly spooked in the run-up to this match, and credit to Yokozuna, he played the part perfectly. From being apprehensive when he thought The Undertaker could be lurking around to legit falling down in fear when The Undertaker made an appearance, Yokozuna's work leading up to the Royal Rumble was great. The match itself was also pretty good, and again, credit to Yokozuna here. He wrestled differently during the early stages of this match. He was afraid of The Undertaker, but he knew he had to try and hurt him. The two, I felt, worked well together, and although everyone remembers the ending, there's also a good wrestling match here between Taker and Yokozuna. Anyway, towards the end of the match, Taker was about to close the casket on Yokozuna and win the WWF Championship, but Crush made an appearance and attacked The Undertaker. After Taker had taken out Crush, a bunch of heels ran to the ring to assist Yokozuna, and thanks to the mystical qualities of the urn, Undertaker was able to fight back. This led to even more bad guys running to the ring, and for a while, The Undertaker was easily defeating 6 guys at once. Soon enough though, it became too much, and the heels of the WWF took out The Undertaker while Yokozuna took the urn away from Paul Bearer. It was the complete destruction of The Undertaker here, and with mercy, Yokozuna ended the match by rolling Taker into the casket. The heels began bringing the casket back up the entranceway, and just then, green smoke began coming out of the casket, the lights went out, and Undertaker appeared on the screens from inside the casket. Undertaker said that all of mankind will witness the rebirth of The Undertaker before announcing that he will not rest in peace. Just then, The Undertaker began levitating from the screen up to the rafters. Now, this was really cool and bonus points for the creativity, but the way this was shot for the viewers at home wasn't that great. It was hard to see the levitation because it was so dark. It maybe looked better in the arena, but at home, yeah, a bit more lighting could have helped. Still, take nothing away from this match at the Royal Rumble and the ending. People still remember the end of Yokozuna vs The Undertaker at this pay-per-view. So yeah, Undertaker was now gone to heal up his injuries. This would mean that Undertaker would miss WrestleMania X in Madison Square Garden, and it's kinda intriguing to think of where he could have slotted into the WrestleMania card of 1994. The WWF wouldn't just stop mentioning Taker on TV though, far from it. Instead, videos would air with people saying they spotted The Undertaker out and about as a wild hunt for the whereabouts of The Undertaker began on TV. This dude here said Taker came in to get some food and vanished. These ladies said that The Undertaker popped in to get a new solid gold urn. The firefighters said that they saw The Undertaker in a cloud of smoke. Even these kids said that they saw The Undertaker. Eventually, the $1 Million Man, Ted Dibiase, said that he would bring back the dead man. He knew where he was, and he would reintroduce him live on TV. DiBiase did bring The Undertaker back, but it wasn't The Undertaker we all knew. This Undertaker was not controlled by the urn, but he was controlled by money. Paul Bearer knew it wasn't the real Undertaker, and the younger fans at home, well, some still weren't too sure. This fake Undertaker was portrayed by primetime Brian Lee, a man who made a name for himself in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and after this Undertaker business was done with, he would return to the WWF as Chains of the DOA. Brian Lee also worked for ECW during 1996 and early 1997, but yeah, most fans will know that this wasn't the real Undertaker. I'm sure all you guys watching knew it wasn't The Undertaker, but I must say that Brian Lee pulled the stunt off well. When you think of the limited options they had for guys to pull this off, I don't think the WWF could have picked anyone better than Brian Lee. Dubious about this fake Undertaker, Paul Bearer said that he would bring back the real Undertaker, and so we had a mystery on our hands, and a mystery like this needs Mr. Leslie Nielsen. Leslie had acted in the highly recommended spoof Naked Gun movies and the Police Squad TV show. If anyone was going to find the real Undertaker and get to the bottom of this mystery, it was the ever-lovable Frank Drebin. Leslie promised us throughout a bunch of skits that he would solve the case at Summerslam, and it just so happened that Ted DiBiase's Undertaker would face Paul Bearer's Undertaker at the same pay-per-view. Just a quick note on Leslie Nielsen here. I've read online that people didn't like his involvement. They found it goofy, along with the usual stigma with celebrities taking up TV time on wrestling shows. I wholeheartedly disagree with this. I loved his involvement. Yes, it was silly, but if you call this silly while sitting down to watch The Undertaker versus The Undertaker with a straight face as a grown adult, then I really don't know what to say. The Undertaker versus The Undertaker then at SummerSlam 1994. You have to watch this back with the eyes of a kid, really. It's easy for us to watch this now and complain about this gimmick match main eventing the biggest WWF pay-per-view of the summer, but as a kid who doesn't know any better, this stuff is totally nuts, and it's really what wrestling should be for the younger audience. It's fun. People tend to pick this match apart these days, doing deep dives into everything surrounding the match, from Leslie's involvement beforehand, the fact that Brian Lee was smaller than Mark Calloway, the intricacies of the fake Undertaker's movements. I mean, people take this really seriously. If you don't take it so seriously and you watch it for what it's supposed to be, a gimmick attraction match, then it's enjoyable. It isn't Flair versus Steamboat, it isn't Hart versus Austin, it's an attraction match. And also, as a kid, seeing the entrance of the real Undertaker at SummerSlam 1994 was awesome, and still to this day, this is one of my favourite Undertaker entrances, with Paul Bearer holding the spotlight urn and all that stuff. I'm not going to go into great detail here about the match. It was the classic Mortal Kombat mirror match with the real Undertaker coming out on top, and we had the real Undertaker back on our TV screen soon after. Taker replaced his grey and black outfit with a purple and black outfit, and we're off once again. Bruce Pritchard revealed a story about SummerSlam 1994 that's worth mentioning. Bret Hart took on his younger brother Owen Hart in a steel cage match, an excellent match in itself, and really it needed to be. Those who get so offended by Undertaker versus Undertaker have Bret versus Owen beforehand, so there really shouldn't be any complaints. That being said, Bret and Owen went way over their allotted time. Owen and Bret took an additional 20 minutes apparently, which is absolutely insane when you think about it, but this is what Bruce Pritchard said. Bret vs Owen went for a total of 32 minutes bell to bell, and Undertaker vs Undertaker went for around 8 minutes. Now think about it, really think about it. Which match would you prefer to have gone on longer? When asked about Undertaker's reaction to Bret and Owen going overtime, Pritchard said, "Undertaker was hot. Nobody was there for the confrontation because no one wanted to be there, but Taker did go and talk to Bret just to let him know he wasn't happy with it. It didn't get heated. Taker's not that kind of guy, but he did have a conversation with him that night. and no one was there, so there was no witnesses. The only people that know what happened are Undertaker and Bret. Immediately following Summerslam 1994, Undertaker faced Crush and Yokozuna in a series of house show matches for around a month. Undertaker then got his revenge on Yokozuna on pay-per-view by defeating him in a casket match at the 1994 Survivor Series. This one I felt wasn't as good as the Royal Rumble encounter. Their first match was much more memorable for sure. Taker would then go on to feud with Ted Dibiase's $1 Million Corporation, a feud that took up most of The Undertaker's 1995. The Royal Rumble then in 1995 saw Undertaker defeat IRS in a pretty forgettable match. After the showdown, King Kong Bundy distracted The Undertaker, which allowed IRS to repossess the urn and take it away from Paul Bearer. So Ted Dibiase now had control of the urn, and WrestleMania XI would see a continuation of The Undertaker vs. $1 Million Corporation feud as Taker squared off against King Kong Bundy on the grandest stage of them all. During the match, Undertaker got the urn back briefly, but Kama ran to the ring and stole it back, running off backstage while Undertaker was busy with Bundy. Undertaker of course scored the win at WrestleMania, but he had once again lost the urn. Kama ended up melting the urn into a chain necklace, and The Undertaker set out to get it back. On his road to SummerSlam, where The Undertaker would face Kama, Undertaker faced Mabel in the King of the Ring tournament at the King of the Ring pay-per-view. The Undertaker put Mabel over, and Mabel won the entire King of the Ring tournament. The Kama vs Undertaker match at SummerSlam 1995 probably meant a lot more to the men involved in the match than to us watching at home. Charles Wright and Mark Calloway were good friends backstage, and it must have been fun for both guys to work against each other here on pay-per-view. The two had already met previously, of course, quite a lot on the house show loop, and also the two men faced each other in a dark match during the very first In Your House show. Again, at SummerSlam we had another casket match though, and this one is different from past casket matches thanks to it being a much more hotly contested wrestling match. Past casket matches felt a little gimmicky, and that's not a bad thing either. It's a gimmick match after all, but Kama and Undertaker decided to work a longer match here that was more about the fight than the actual casket. It's a decent match here, it's never really brought up, and you should still check it out. Undertaker gets the win, and he gets back his urn, albeit in chain form for a little while. While watching this match and realising it was much better than I remembered, I went online to see what the general reviews were for this match, just to see what others thought about it. I ran into an article that went through all of Undertaker's SummerSlam opponents on denofgeek.com. Yes, these guys are clearly not the authority on wrestling matches, but they are a huge pop culture website and they get a ton of traffic. Anyway, here's what they wrote in regards to The Undertaker vs Kama at SummerSlam 95. Undertaker's SummerSlam opponents didn't get much better. In 1995, his lengthy feud with Ted Dibiase's $1 Million Corporation came to an end when he took on Kama, the Supreme Fighting Machine. Keep in mind, by this point, he had already dealt with an evil Undertaker and King Kong Bundy. This is like playing through a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video game, getting past Shredder and Krang, then having to defeat Bebop in the final level. It was a casket match, and to add some flavour to the battle, Kama had stolen the urn and had it melted down into gold chains. I can't fault the man for style. Kama, otherwise known as Papa Shango and the Godfather, is one of the worst performers in the company's history, so this fight was borderline unwatchable. So there you have it folks, according to Den of Geek, Charles Wright was one of the worst performers in WWF history and the casket match at SummerSlam is unwatchable. I know for a fact that Charles Wright's statement is so far off the mark that it's ridiculous, and I can't change anyone's opinion on the SummerSlam casket match, but make up your own minds and watch it. I've watched a ton of wrestling in my lifetime, and calling Kama vs The Undertaker unwatchable is as equally as ridiculous to me as saying Kama was one of the worst wrestlers in the company. And you may very well agree with this guy, but calling Kama one of the worst WWF performers in history, especially when discussing a 1995 WWF match, I just find this insanely off the mark. But anyway, let's get back on track. Following SummerSlam, The Undertaker suffered a broken orbital bone, an injury that was caused by King Mabel. In normal circumstances, this would lead to a lengthy hiatus from wrestling to allow the superstar to heal, but the WWF were going through some hard times here and Taker soldiered on. The WWF decided to kayfabe the injury a little by having The Undertaker wear a mask, adding it to the story, whereas the mask was really being worn not to cause any further damage. I loved The Undertaker's mask. It doesn't get talked about too much these days, but I thought it looked really cool. The WWF put it across that a series of leg drops from Mabel caused the injury, but in reality it was a botched clothesline. A month later, Taker came back to TV wearing the mask. At the Survivor Series in 1995 then, Taker led his Survivor Series team featuring Fatu, Savio Vega and Henry Godwin into a match against Jerry Lawler, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Isaac Yankem and King Mabel. Taker's team scored the victory. What you should note here though is that Undertaker's team were all part of the Bone Street crew, a group of friends who hung out together backstage and drove together from town to town. Also of note here is that this was really the last King Mabel match to hold any sort of relevance. The injury to Undertaker's face pretty much sealed his fate. In his final Raw appearance then of 1995, The Undertaker defeated Isaac Yankem DDS, a man who would play a huge part in The Undertaker's story in the years that followed. And this is where we will end this upload. 1996 would be a pivotal year for the dead man. The Undertaker's character would go through a transformation of sorts during his feud with Mankind, which also kinda set the tone for what was to come in later years. Undertaker also worked against names such as Bret Hart and Diesel in 1996, and this will be covered, along with 1997, in the next Undertaker video uploaded to this channel. Thanks very much for watching.